Okay, we're very pleased to have Rohinton Ghandhi with us today as part of our project and interviews. Thank you, Ro, for participating.
Thank you for asking.
Now, we're going to start off, as we always do with each of our interviewees, by asking a few background questions just for context. So I'm going to start off by asking, where were your parents born?
Bombay, India.
Okay.
So was I.
Okay, and you were, okay, that answers my next question. Thank you. And where did you receive your elementary, secondary, and post-secondary education?
Cecil Newman here in LaSalle for my first 2 years, Westbrook School in Saint Laurent for my up to grade 6, and then LaSalle High School Protestant here in LaSalle for the rest of high school. After that, it was Dawson College, and for personal reasons, I was going to become a film director, but my dad was ill, so I had to drop all that after 2.5 years of studying that. And then I went into work, and then after that, I went to Concordia University for finance.
Okay. And what is your occupation and any past occupations that you've had?
My gosh, DJ, photographer, writer, researcher, photographer, for the Bank of Montreal, various things like fraud investigator, foreign currency, derivatives, markets, money markets. I've been a manager for London operations at that time. But for the last 10 years, it was all fraud. And I retired about 2 years ago, early.
Okay. And
I spending most of my time right now researching whatever I can with the time that's allotted to me with with me Verdun, Crawford Park, LaSalle, and writing those things down, and actually factualizing them takes longer than actually writing them. And you just want to make sure that when you write something, or when I write something, it's historically backed up with proof. Sorry if that's a long-winded answer.
No, that's fine. And where do you live now, Ro?
I live in Crawford Park in Verdun.
Okay, very good. So now we're going to get to what I call the meat of the matter. And these are questions concerning your experience living in Quebec today. So I'm going to start off by asking you, from your perspective, what is the best thing about living in Quebec today?
I'd say it's the location. Montreal itself is still a great place to live. We just want to make it better, and we're finding with these regressive laws, we don't feel as welcomed, but the actual location is still our home. And I'd like to keep it that way.
Okay. And the next question, a lot of people have trouble with it, and it's completely understandable. I certainly, if somebody posed it to me, I would have trouble. But having said that, I'd like you to answer the question as it's posed and then elaborate on it in any way you see fit. So having said that, I'm just going to go ahead and ask the question. Describe your relationship to Quebec in a single word.
Dysfunctional.
Okay.
Because at one point when I came here in '67, it was an inclusive province. It's becoming more and more obvious that it's a segregated province, and I'll never be part of that club. And to be honest, I don't really want to be. I'd rather be in the club where it's all Quebecers for one, rather than 2 Quebecers for 3.
Fair enough. Now,
also, I come from a long line of barristers related to Gandhi indirectly with my aunt. And my dad always, when we came here on a visa, we had a year to scope things out. We weren't permanent residents, what I'm trying to say. And he started work for a company, I think it was Maislin's, as an accountant. He was a chartered accountant, and he made sure that the the timesheets were in English and in French, because when he got there, it was only in English. And he fought to have English and French on both sides, even though that would mean losing the rights to stay in Canada. You know what I'm saying? So that taught me a lot, and taking us out to Bill 22 and those kind of rallies taught me a lot on how you should be protecting your rights, rather than just being apathetic on them and saying, oh, there's nothing I could do. There's always something you could do.
Okay. And where do you feel most at home in Quebec? For example, in communities based on language, culture, profession, or geographic location?
Probably geographic location because of the history aspect of it. It's not only that, when you live in a place for over 40 years, you know the streets, you know the people. And unfortunately, it's these laws that are destroying those communities, because once you start reducing schools, they're at the heart of a community. And that's exactly what I saw happen in the 70s and 80s is because of the decline in the ability to go to English schools, it destroyed this community, at least. And once that went, I'll use the word again, dysfunctional, because a lot of our friends here are in Ontario or other parts of Canada, or not even in Canada anymore, because of those segregative laws.
Okay. Now, the next question, it's a two-part question, and people have asked me about the second part. They say, well, Dave, what do you mean by the official definition? So what I mean is, it's how you perceive the official definition. And that could be based on the Quebec government, the federal government, the media's definition. It's whatever you perceive to be the official definition in Quebec. So having said that, hopefully you understand that, then I'll ask the two-point question. How would you define a Quebecer? And do you think the official definition in Quebec includes you?
I would define a Quebecer as anyone who is proud to promote and to contribute to Quebec society, no matter what language or religion or I guess freedom of expressions are allowed to be as a Canadian as well. I think the Canadian part of it is very much has to do with the Quebec part of it. And the definition for me, that would be a contributor to both your country and to your province, because for me, they're all in one. And people should think that way. They just don't. And for the official meaning, I don't think it includes me at all, because over the years, progressively, they've removed my component from being a Quebecer in legislation. And I don't think that they have the right to do that. Even though there's a minority issue, they don't have the right to take away someone's identity through legislation. But they have.
Fair enough.
That's my answer.
Okay, and that leads into my next question. Has your sense of identity as a Quebecer changed over the years, and if so, in what ways?
Absolutely. I'm bilingual. I speak both. I just I don't think that they're considering us to be part of the progress or the success of Quebec anymore. I think they should be, because we're always open to language. We're always open to events that are in French. We're always open to welcoming anybody from Quebec or anybody from outside Quebec, saying this is a great place to live, specifically Montreal. And they keep downplaying the issue that we're an international city, and we still are. And these language legislations that they keep putting forth is just unwelcoming to a lot of people, because you should be opening doors, not closing doors. And that's what it does. It limits the ability to be inclusive by saying you're controlling the language. You're not controlling the language, you're reducing your own language by controlling others. And that's just not right. The Canadian government is doing nothing about it. In fact, with C-13 coming up, they're going to put Quebec provincial legislation into federal legislation, which is completely illegal in my sense of view. And nobody's doing anything about it, because everyone's using the flag of notwithstanding. Because for me, the formation of Canada is at the core of all this and should be protected. The federal government is not protecting anyone in this case.
Okay, and that leads me into the next question, which you may have already responded in your responses to your the other questions, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Mm-hmm. What are some of the most difficult things about living in Quebec? I'm
sorry, I could barely hear you.
What are some of the most difficult things about living in Quebec?
The idea that our services in English are being reduced when we're part of the same tax base. We get no tax incentive because it's only in French. We get nothing. We pay equal tax, but we don't have equal representation. And in that sense, I think that's also should be illegal because that's a Canadian value, or should be. And the idea that if you're deteriorating one Quebecer, you're deteriorating all Quebecers. They just don't get that. And I don't like the idea of every party thinking that Quebec is a burning ship and they need to burn the English people first. That's not the idea of Quebec that I know of. And in fact, this is not reflective of my friends who are bilingual, who are French or Francophone or separatists. I mean, I've had neighbors here during the ice storm. We've shared freezers, we've shared showers, we've shared you name it. It didn't matter language. It was all about who you are, and actually, it's about who you are. Yes, and we were Quebecers then, and we still are today. Because if you promote inclusiveness, you get inclusiveness. If you legislate it out, then you're asking for division. And there's enough segregation in this world. Stop causing it.
Okay, fair enough. Now, in recent years, members of Quebec's Francophone majority have identified a number of linguistic and cultural threats. Which of these concerns do you share and support? And which of these concerns make you feel excluded or targeted?
Well, it's the idea of preservation versus segregation. I've said this before. There has to be a balance, but the balance doesn't mean either one side, heavy on one side or heavy on the other. We can coexist, and we have coexisted for years. It's just the idea that being legislated to speak something, to say that you're saving a language, doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make common sense, maybe to me, and to most Quebecers, because like I said, you should be inclusive. You shouldn't be exclusive. I hope that answers it.
Mm-hmm. And what in your mind is the biggest problem facing Quebec today, and how in your mind do you feel it could be resolved?
Again, with global business, being in the global business for most of my life, companies are not looking to Montreal as a go-to place anymore because of the language issues, copyrights. They just don't want to deal with that. And then to tell you the truth, because global businesses are no longer looking at Montreal, they're looking at Halifax, Toronto, Vancouver, and believe it or not, Winnipeg, to be these central hubs, then Montreal should stop calling itself the technological head hub of Canada, because it's not. It's Toronto, but they keep repeating these confidence items to the public, saying, "Yeah, we are the leader." We're not, and we're slowly declining because of that kind of segregative law, which is getting a lot more acute towards these problems. I'd rather be an open economy like Montreal was as an international city than its closedness now. I'd rather be considered as a place of destination than not. And Montreal is becoming less of that choice. Companies will come here for that 75% tax break for 3 years, and then they'll leave. Just look at Hyundai. There's so many examples of this. They take our money and leave. They won't stay, and the jobs don't stay, of course. Just recently, this week, it's been Google. Prior to that, it's been a lot of tech companies that they leave overnight. You just never hear from them. And I guess the government's too embarrassed to say that they're gone, but the truth is that they are gone. And I'd rather turn that around. I'd rather turn Montreal is the economic hub of Quebec, and it should be welcoming rather than, hey, questioning, I hope that answers it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the next question, I'm going to pause for a second here. And I think we might have discussed this before, Ro, but I'll preface the question by asking you, have you seen Guy Rogers' film, What We Choose to Remember? I think we talked about this.
No.
You haven't. And I was going to send you a link, which I'm going to do. I'm making a note here to send you a link. I really highly recommend you see it, because it really addresses a lot of the things that you have been talking about and many of my interviewees. When I say address, it doesn't solve it, but it exposes it in a very even-handed manner and lets people make up their own mind. But I highly recommend it. Guy's a good friend of mine as well. And he's also been a great influence in these questions based
Okay.
on his experience in conducting.
Okay, I'll definitely take a look at it.
Yeah, and I'll send you the link right after we're done here.
Nope,
And it's
don't worry
free.
about it. I'll look at it at another time if that's okay.
Yeah, no. There's
Okay.
no hurry. And the thing is, the link itself plays the movie, so you can play if your TV's hooked up to the internet. You can watch it on your TV. You can watch it.
Yeah, no, I know Guy Rogers from the Quebec Anglo Heritage Network.
Yeah, the great
I've
guy.
met him several times. He was doing some work for Videotron. I think it's My TV.
Yeah. At any rate, this is his latest effort. And the reason I bring this up at this juncture is in this film, he uses a very effective visual tool, which I'm going to use with his permission, by the way, in the next question. So what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to indicate by a show of fingers on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being weak, 10 being very strong. How strongly do you feel that the joys of living in Quebec outweigh the challenges?
9.
Show of fingers. Very good. Thank you very much, Ro. That was great. Now, lastly, is there anything else that you would like to say that you haven't already about your sense of identity or belonging in Quebec?
I'd just like to say that I am an immigrant. We're all immigrants. The Aboriginals are the originals, and they're getting the shortest end of the stick. They have more land rights than Canada has. They have more land rights than Quebec has. Whether we choose to ignore it or not, they're the true immigrants. And when I'm being called an immigrant, I reflect back saying, so are you. Whether it be for 300 years or in my case, 60 years. I've contributed to Quebec just as much as any other Quebecer, tax-wise, time-wise, community-wise, even bringing up family here. It's I've done just as much as any other Quebecer, I'm proud to say. But if you don't include me in that equation, you're just cutting your own foot off, because number one, it's a lie. Number two, it's it just gets you nowhere to hate someone rather than include them when they want to be included. I don't know if I've said that right, but being from a long line of immigrants that stayed here and went through the hardships and knew that we were never going to be part of the 300 Club, which my dad called it because they're here for 300 years. We're not. We still learned French. We still enjoy speaking French. We still enjoy reading French. It's not our mother tongue, no, but we don't discount it like they pretend to discount us.
That's excellent, Ro, and very well said. And thank you very much for participating. What I'm going to do, Ro, is stop the recording here. We could continue our discussion offline here. So I will stop.